Hey guys, welcome to the Kunal Call. I'm Kunal Bhatti and I'm joined again by the four horsemen of the Kunal Call. It's Mustafa, Mikhail, and Farhan. And we
Hey
all
yo,
thank you guys for coming. And this particular topic is very, what do you say, very intriguing because something just happened in 1999 that really shocked the world. Not just because it's a wrestling event, because someone actually, died. Before we go into the actual incident and what happened after that, I want to talk about the person Owen Hart. Owen Hart is considered one of the best wrestlers of his generation or any generation. He has been, considered as one of the best. He could have been more better, considering when you hear the wrestlers talk about him. So, Mikhail, I want to ask you this question: that did you ever see any matches of Owen Hart, and if you have, what do you think about that?
hey Kunal, great to be back on the Kunal call. Brilliant podcast, I may say. Anyway, coming to Owen Hart, yeah, I've seen a couple of his matches. Not gonna lie, not too much. I've seen his matches with his brother Bret Hart, the one at WrestleMania 10. There was the one at SummerSlam. There was also his famous match. I think it was at Survivor Series or SummerSlam with Bret, but there was also that famous match with Stone Cold Steve Austin. That was at SummerSlam. All three of those matches were very impressive, and it even, in my opinion, I think that had Owen been pushed the way Bret Hart was, I think Owen would have matched Bret like in terms of superstardom. But I guess different priorities, which we'll get into in a while.
Yeah, that's a good point. Farhan, I want to ask you regarding Bret and Owen Hart at WrestleMania 10. I think that it is a match better than the Shawn versus Razor Ramon match, technical wise, because obviously the Shawn versus Razor Ramon had the what do you say the high flying agility and shocking moments. You know, the ladder the first time. But as a wrestling match, do you think it was better, Bret versus Owen at WrestleMania 10?
Yeah, I definitely, before I get started, I want to say thanks for having me back. Uh, Pleasure to be here. And to answer your question, yeah, no, I definitely felt that Brett versus Owen was the real show stealing match of WrestleMania 10, not Shawn and Razor. Definitely, in fact, it was more entertaining, actually. So it told a better story, I felt. And it was just a fun match, a lot of excitement and a lot of nail biting. It definitely was better than Shawn and Razor for sure. And I think that match set a rivalry that lasted for a few years with Bret and Owen. And also my favorite thing about this match was the finish. I like the fact that it was a nice, quick, sneaky finish, unexpected, and it was a better match for sure. I mean, Shawn and Razor had a great match, but I think Bret and Owen definitely had a better match for sure. 100%.
So I'd like to go to Mustafa now. Um, Owen Hart was obviously one of the greatest prodigies in wrestling business. You know, he was the youngest son of the Hart family. Do you think he was as good as Bret, or do you think he was better than Bret Hart?
First of all, Kunal, thanks a lot for having me on this podcast. For me, I personally believe that I can't choose who was better because they both had their own style. Bret Hart was more of the Canadian hard hitting style. Owen Hart was more of a high flyer. So, better or not than Bret, I can't choose technically. But at that point of time, definitely Bret was more famous. However, if Owen would have been given the push that if he hadn't passed away, then he could have been better than Bret in WWE. He could have had a better legacy, and probably he would have been the main Hart name. For me, I personally believe that I can't.
Okay. So let's talk about the main incident that happened at Over the Edge. Um, I want to get right to it. Um, what happened when he passed away was despicable in the first place that they continued the pay-per-view. But let's talk about what he was doing. He was about to make an entrance from 70 feet in the air and coming down as the blue blazer. because they were not getting a character for Owen Hart, which was considered one of the failures of the creative team in WWE. So, Mikhail, I want to ask you this: did he have to do it? Did he have to do the stunt?
Sorry, your voice got cut off, man.
I'm just saying that did he have to do the stunt at Over the Edge pay-per-view, coming from 70 feet in the air?
Did he have to do the stunt? Well,
Yeah.
see, I think that in terms of this whole for like Blue Blazer was Owen Hart's whole gimmick, and I think that WWE was just they didn't know what to do with Owen because he flat out refused to do like any adult storylines because he wanted to set an example for his children. But I really think that if Owen Hart, like based on what you've read, Owen Hart was evidently not comfortable with the stunt in the first place. He was very tense about it. He was very stressed. But he said, "What is WWE going to do with me anyway? Because I refused adult storylines, so I have to do this." But he was evidently not comfortable. So I think that this could have easily been avoided. I think that WWF or WWE, whichever one you want to call it, they could have recognized that their employee was uncomfortable, or even Owen himself should have been saying something to them. But I guess he was worried about his job. But yeah, in conclusion, this definitely could have been avoided.
Farhan, I want to ask you: was it did Vince McMahon did not give a shit about Owen Hart when it was happening?
See, your question is what exactly? Do you mean are you saying that question because he carried on the show, or just in general?
No, because I think that when you have a talent like Owen Hart in your company, you're
I
not.
I think I know what you're trying to say. See, I understand what you're trying to say. See, the thing is that I can't really say it, that Vince didn't give a shit about Owen Hart. You can't say that because you have to consider that Owen Hart, when you hear a lot of shoot interviews by other wrestlers, Owen, unlike the other wrestlers, even though he was a prodigy, he was, an exceptional talent. His priority wasn't wrestling.
Yeah.
His main priority was his family. So when you want to be the top, when you want to be champion, when you want to be the guy main eventing WrestleMania, you have to make wrestling your life. You have to be able to sacrifice your family for the business. And Owen was not willing to do that, and you can't really force someone to do that. Owen, to him, wrestling was just. I'm not saying that he was not passionate about it, but it wasn't his main priority. It was his family. So, what can you do with someone like that, to be very honest? Vince was left with very few options regarding Owen Hart because see, a lot of the champions back in the day, especially during the 90s, they used to when they wanted to be champion, they would let it be known, like, I want to be champion. They would fight for it. They would be like, this is what I want. I'm going to claw, tooth, and nail to become champion. Owen was never like that. Owen's main priority was just to save up money to spend time with his family. So, you can't really say that because he wasn't champion, that Vince didn't give a shit about Owen Hart. Now, the second part is regarding him carrying on the show. I think that that was a very insensitive thing to do for sure. But like I said, I don't think Vince didn't give a shit about Owen Hart. I just think Vince gave more for cared more about the business than he did about his wrestlers. You know
But
what
the
I'm trying
guy
to say?
died, dude. But the guy died
Yeah, I
there.
know. I agree. The guy died, and I agree. The guy died for 100%. But the thing is that I'm not glorifying the action and saying it was the right thing to do. It's not a case of Vince not giving a shit about about Vince not giving a shit about Owen Hart. It's just Vince was prioritizing the business over his wrestlers. I'm not saying that's the right thing to do. Don't get
Yeah.
me wrong, because I'm sure that if Shane McMahon fell 70 foot down and killed himself in the ring, I'm sure that he would have stopped the show right there. You know what I'm saying? He wouldn't have carried on the show. But the thing is that Vince just cared more about the business than Owen Hart. It's not like he didn't give a shit about Owen Hart. He just didn't prioritize over his own business. That's the way I see it.
Mika, you were saying something? Or you wanted to say something between?
Yeah, I just wanted to add it like in regards to this whole McMahon Hart thing that I think that what happened was Vince even didn't know what to do. I think that even he basically his brain froze and the entire locker room's brain froze because this was so unexpected. I mean, who thought Owen was gonna fall like that and they would have this whole there must have been hundreds of things racing through Vince's mind. One was Owen's death, one was the show, one was the publicity this was going to lead to. There were a lot of things. So I don't think that even Vince was in the right state of mind. I'm not saying this is an excuse. I think that if someone has died on your watch, then it's your moral obligation to yeah.
No, carry
Yeah,
on.
go ahead.
Carry on,
Okay.
carry on.
Yeah, I think that it would have been Vince's moral obligation to stop the show and announce tell the truth to the world. But he did compensate the next night on Raw. It was like instead of it was being Raw is War, it was Raw is Owen. So they did the whole classy thing where they pay tribute. Matches were held in Owen's honor, not just in WWE but even in WCW with Bret. So I think that it might have been a case of brain freeze on the part of Vince. I'm not saying it's a good excuse, but I'm just saying that, and even I think that even it's the factor of what Farhan said that Vince McMahon cared about the business more.
Yeah, that's evident. Musta, I want to ask you about Bret Hart. Obviously, he was in the rival company, and he was on a plane apparently when he was going to do the Jay Leno show at that particular time, and he got a phone call on the airplane. How must have it felt for Bret Hart to even hear that news that his brother has passed away because of WWE's, you know, they didn't take it seriously, the safety of Owen Hart, and his brother passing away. What must have that felt like for Bret Hart, honestly?
Exactly. You asked about Bret Hart, but I feel like the whole Hart family felt crushed at that point
Yeah,
because it's not like that was the first, nail in the coffin from Vince towards the Harts. 2 years ago, Bret Hart was, disgraced in the whole screw job. A couple of years later, like, Davey Boy Smith passed away. Like, the Hart family was going through shit during those times. So one can only imagine what Bret Hart must have felt like. The same guy who screwed him over 2 years ago, now his brother dies on his watch.
yeah,
To answer your question about Vince, I personally feel like Vince genuinely didn't care. Now, again, I know this might sound harsh and all that,
yeah,
but reports have said ever since the Attitude Era began, two people, Vince McMahon and Vince Russo, both the Vinces, became heartless assholes in a way that all they cared about was the drama in WWE and that's it. They saw their top stars as money and nothing more. If Vince had the slightest bit of concern for the Hearts, he would have stopped the show right there, right then. Because even though, okay, like Miguel said, like that was a brain freeze moment or whatnot, it's still not an excuse to continue the show like that. We've
correct,
seen what happens in other sports, like when the Hillsborough disaster happened, right? The fans were dying in the stands. The players
correct.
weren't being affected, yet the match stopped. Yet the match
Yeah,
stopped over there. Other incidents like that have happened as well. Matches have stopped, events have stopped if someone dies or whatever. Here, I can't even think what it had been for the wrestlers to go in and wrestle on the same place where someone has just died. The blood is right there. There's like a dent in the ring. It's messed
yeah.
up, really, what Vince did. And to imagine what Bret Hart must have gone through, I can't even imagine. Like, those years were hell for the Hearts, is all I know.
Yeah, it was a pretty disappointing thing to happen. No one expected that to happen. I want to talk to you about the mentions that the superstars do about Owen Hart. Everyone has a Owen Hart story. Everyone really remembers him. But that shows that he was such a big guy in terms of his, not just because of his wrestling, because of as a person he was. He was so good as a person, and he really gave a damn about the people's feelings. He wanted to make jokes and stuff like that. Had he not passed away, for example, let's imagine that there was no incident like this. How do you think his career would have been more? Farhan, I'd like to ask you this because a year later, Chris Benoit came. I said his name, obviously. Eddie Guerrero came, Dean Malenko came, and then Kurt Angle came. Edge, these kind of stars, they came. They would have great matches with Owen Hart.
Yeah, the SJWs are on the way, but the See, the thing is that I don't think any, even if Owen Hart had lived, I don't think anything would have really happened, to be very honest. See, the thing is that during that time, Owen Hart was going to retire. See,
Oh,
what, yeah, so see, what makes the whole thing so tragic is the fact that, his main goal was to save money for his family. He wanted to be there for Oach, he wanted to be there for Martha, for Athena, and around that time he had collected enough money where he could just split and just be with his family. So, the fact that it happened around that time is pretty sad. And, Owen loved his family. He loved being a father. He loved being a husband. And when he was so close to finally being with them, he was just taken away from them. So I know when it comes to Owen Hart, I'm more concerned about the priority was, the priority is more towards his family rather than wrestling. I think that, you have all these great superstars that you mentioned. And yes, of course, Owen would have had great matches, but I think by 2000, 2001, he would have retired, actually, to be honest, to be there with his family. So I don't really think his career would have really progressed that much because a lot, like I said, a lot had to do with his attitude. The business, the wrestling business, it was not his priority, like most wrestlers. It was his family. You know what I'm saying? So I don't think, in terms of wrestling, like his career, it would have made any difference had he been alive. I think Owen's life should be defined beyond wrestling. He's more remembered. I think when you hear from other wrestlers, of course you hear about his wrestling and etc. But I think people are more impacted by Owen Hart, the person, not
yeah.
Owen Hart, the wrestler. You know what I'm trying to say? So I think Owen Hart's impact should be, measured through his impact on other people rather than his impact on wrestling. So that's my answer to you.
Yeah, that's true. Mikhail, I would like to ask you regarding the WWE's lack of leniency on the safety. They really didn't give him that much safety. So much money they spent on pay-per-views. They were earning so much of money. They were really, that if you want a superstar to do that, suppose Shawn Michaels has to make an entrance at WrestleMania 12, where he's coming from WrestleMania 12, yeah, when he's coming from the top of the dome, top of the
Yeah.
stadium, and the safety net is not secure, he might die there because that's I think it's 300 feet in the air. He's coming to the top of the stadium, and that's for an entrance. So obviously, Vince had to spend so much of money to make sure that this superstar is not injured. And in the dark side of the documentary, which I think is one of the best documentaries I've seen on Owen Hart, when they showed the picture of the clip where he was hanging, how shocked were you?
I think that when it came to you just nailed it, Kunal. Like pretty much. I mean, I think that he wasn't given the same kind of equipment that Shawn Michaels was, because see, Shawn Michaels it was from his waist. You can see that he's holding it like this in WrestleMania 12. Whereas Owen Hart, they wanted to make him like a superhero because he was the Blue Blazer, so they wanted him to be on his back. But the problem was the harness, in my opinion, was quite weak. And from what I see, it's very shocking that you know even Steve Boredom, Sting himself, he had made it a habit of doing that during that time because he was going through his whole crow phase. That
Yeah,
he would do the same. He would do a very similar entrance. He would even say that he was even genuinely scared. He couldn't blame Owen for how he felt. But when it comes to Owen Hart, I think that what happened was that no one expected it. I do put blame where it is. I don't think that the same kind of safety equipment was invested in Owen as it was in HBK or in Steve Boredom. But what I will say is no one could have predicted this because they did practice it at that afternoon at Over the Edge 1999. Owen showed up at 3:30 and he did a practice of it, and it worked out just fine. So I know what you're trying to say, but I don't think they did their best to make sure that no stone was unturned. They were really trying to keep uh, Owen safe, but I just think that what happened, they could have taken more precautions, but again, you would have never known because they already had tried it several times and it was fine.
that's that's a different viewpoint. Mustafa, I would like to ask you regarding the Hart family, mainly Owen's wife and his kids. Um, the documentary was so good. It was very describing their pain in some ways. And how did you feel about that?
Yeah, definitely. Anyone would feel their pain, and not just feel their pain, but would stand by them with the arguments they were making. Martha was absolutely in her rights to sue the WWE for for how they handled the situation. And and long story short, like I'm just happy that, I mean, not happy, of course, but like I'm just relieved to know that they own the right to the Owen Hart name, and they're not letting WWE make money off of his name by putting him in the Hall of Fame or doing any like showing any of his matches or like showing any of his DVDs or anything like that.
Yeah, but you touched a point that I was about to ask Farhan. Like Owen Hart should be in the Hall of Fame. He should be, but like in any Hall of Fame because he was so good. But do you think WWE will induct him, or do you think Martha Hart will allow also to for him to be in the Hall of Fame?
Can I answer that first?
Yeah, you can go ahead, Mustafa.
Yeah, here's the thing. So I know a lot of fans would be like crazy about Owen Hart. Like, I mean, they would want WWE to like honor him and stuff like that. But if you look at it in a bigger picture, if you look at it from Martha's and like the whole like Owen Hart's family's point of view, they initially never really wanted him to go to like he himself didn't really want to go into WWE. He never wanted to be like a legendary superstar in the first place. He just wanted to earn money, like Farhan said, for his family, and probably would have retired by 2001, 2002. So that wasn't something they wanted. And then when this happened, they look at it like, okay, now the WWE is going to use his name and make money off of it. People are going to buy Owen Hart DVDs. People are going to watch Owen Hart matches, and even putting his name in the Hall of Fame is like, okay, now because he has a big incident attached to his name, when we put him in the Hall of Fame, like we are going to, like in a way, they will be funding off of his name after his death. And that's something the Hart family had never wanted. So if you ask me, I think they did the right thing. I think Martha did the right thing to stop WWE from using his name and even putting him in the Hall of Fame. Farhan, your turn to answer the question.
Farhan, you can go ahead if you want.
I think Mustafa answered also the way I would. The thing is that I don't think Owen Hart would ever be in the Hall of Fame because of Martha. And yes, of course, while I do want Owen to be recognized for his contributions because he's had some amazing matches, at the same time, like I said, it's his family. What I'm trying to say, and being me myself being a very family oriented person, I can sympathize and empathize as to why Martha would not want Owen Hart to be in the WWE Hall of Fame. I can understand Bret. I can understand why Bret would also want Owen to be in the Hall of Fame because see, I never heard of Owen Hart. I heard of other wrestlers. I've never
Yeah.
ever heard of Owen Hart. He was never promoted, nothing like that. I only heard about it through the internet, and I only watched his matches on YouTube. You know what I'm trying to say? So, and the reason is because he was never promoted because Martha Hart never promoted him, and that is sad for sure. But I can also understand as to why Martha would not want Owen Hart to be in the team because she has every right to bear a grudge against WWE. Because see, you can argue about Vince's state of mind, the ethics, but a man died, a father died, a brother died, a husband died, and no amount of money and no amount of apologies is going to bring that person back to life.
No,
And
I'm
I
not
think
saying that. I'm not saying that he should be in the Hall of Fame. I'm saying as a wrestling fan, as his work, he was a professional athlete. He really was one of a kind.
yeah,
Yeah.
I would love to see his matches more, just to learn. Not to. I don't want to WWE to profit of anything. Like as a fan, as an Owen Hart fan, like I understand what you're saying about the family don't want WWE to earn money from this. They don't want, but the guy did work hard. He really was one of the best there is. Man, his match with Bret Hart, that you could see again and again, and you're like, how is this guy doing it? And he's standing with his brother in the ring. The opening match of WrestleMania 10, I think that's the biggest show there was. 10th anniversary of WrestleMania, and at Madison Square Garden, and Bret was just over when it was going on, and actually Bret helped Owen, but Owen also like really really was good in the match, and he was really nice. I saw one match of Owen with Shawn Michaels that
yeah,
determined, yeah, in some event called In Your House.
yeah, 97,
97, and that determined who would face Bret Hart at WrestleMania 12 when the famous Iron Man match happened.
yeah,
And that match was so good. Because he made wrestling look very smooth. There was no mistakes.
yeah. See, I see your point for sure, but the thing is, I used to think the exact same way as well. I used to think the exact same about Owen Hart. But the thing is that when you read about the history, when you read about the incident, when you read about the facts, it's not just the WWE that was affected. It's a man's family that was also affected by
Yeah,
this incident. So, me myself also being a very family-oriented person, I can sort of, I understand both sides of the argument. Don't get me wrong, I really do. But just for me personally, I am more towards why Owen would not be in the Hall of Fame. I understand why Martha would not want him because, see, the fact of the matter is that it took years. See, thing is that it took years and years for WWE to finally give Martha Hart the compensation for Owen Hart's death. And to
yeah,
this day, because they took a settlement, because she was, I think, probably coerced into a settlement, we never really got to find out the actual truth, because it never went to trial.
yeah. I never went.
It never went to trial. So that's the thing. So that's the really, really sad part. Is that I guess we'll never know the truth of what happened. You know what I mean? So maybe there is a side to the story that we're not aware of because the case never went to trial. So we don't have all the facts to make a judgment. You know what I'm trying to say? We're relying
Yeah,
on whatever we have. That's one to consider when you talk about Owen Hart and everything. You have to consider that we don't know the facts because the case never went to trial. You know what I'm trying to say? It was settled. So
yeah,
I think that's what makes it more tragic, because not only did someone die, but we don't even like okay, with Eddie Guerrero, with Chris Benoit, we get the full facts. But with Owen Hart, we can never understand his death. It's taped up in a video in Connecticut. It's sealed away somewhere, and we can't even view it. I mean, I don't know. Like, I'd want to view that tape for sure, but not because of I'm some sadist, but because I just wanted to see what it would be like. Um,
what
uh,
exactly happened?
yeah, exactly what happened. Because we don't know the truth.
Like, no,
You
we don't
know,
know. If
we
it,
don't know
if
the truth.
it happened now, everyone
Yeah,
would have the recording.
yeah,
Everyone.
exactly, exactly. Everyone would have happened, but we don't know. So, I understand both sides of the argument, but I'm more towards Martha on this case. Mikhail wanted to say something.
Yeah, Mika, you want to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to put this out there. Like, see, as a wrestling fan, of course, I would want to see Owen Hart in the Hall of Fame. Like, no doubt at all. He was a great performer. He's had amazing matches. He even showed that he could match his legendary brother Bret Hart. Can
Yeah,
you imagine that? He proved he was just as good as his brother. And I think that Owen Hart deserves that recognition. And the sad thing is, because of legal problems, WWE will never mention Owen Hart. Like, there's only one DVD about him after his death. And I think that maybe on the WWE network, they might have a few of his matches, but he's not really there.
yeah, that's it.
Like, like Brett has, since Brett's return, he doesn't mention him. So yeah, obviously, as a
He does
wrestling fan,
mention
I
Owen.
definitely.
He does mention Owen Hart.
But yeah, but not that much.
I'm saying on WWE programming.
He does. No, he does. He does.
When
Where did he mention
he
Owen?
mentioned on the Hall of Fame speech.
No, 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 no. He mentioned even on Raw. He mentioned on Raw. Jericho mentioned him as well. He's mentioned. He's not mentioned as much as he should have been, but I think
Yeah,
he is mentioned by Brett quite a few times. I think
Okay, never mind.
I remember when you had that fucking god awful Brett versus Vince McMahon match, the
oh
following
yeah,
night on Raw. I think I'm sure Brett was saying I can see my brother Owen from the heavens giving me high fives as I beat Vince McMahon's ass. I think Natalia Neidhart has even mentioned Owen Hart on program. But carry on.
Yeah, so that's my argument. But I have to agree with Farhan actually, because like I said, wrestling fan is different. But if you think it through it practically,
yeah,
me, you, Farhan, or even Mustafa, we don't have the right. No one has the right to say like, oh yeah, Bret Hart should be in the Hall of Fame. The final decision should be with Martha Hart, because at the end of the day, she's the most affected. We all love Owen Hart, but this was his wife. She's been a widow. She's had to raise her kids. Her husband died in a horrific manner. So I can't blame Martha Hart at all. And I think that if she doesn't want Bret in the Hall of Fame, if she doesn't, want all of this glory for Owen, then that's what it should be, because it is she's the one who's had to bear the burden of his death the most. So yeah, I think that Farhan was spot on in saying that.
A very valid point. So I want to ask you regarding something that has happened in terms of Owen Hart's legacy, which is the Owen Hart Foundation that has happened. Like the Owen Hart family has really taken has really they really took it upon themselves to start a foundation where they help people in Canada, because Owen Hart was a superstar in Canada. Like if you see his video when he was the video of his funeral, the whole country was out standing over there. Like the entire neighborhood was out. People were selling packages. Every wrestler was there. So do you think Owen Hart should be remembered through the foundation? And do you have any comments on how his wife has really made his name worth mean more, than just the wrestling guy? He's actually now his foundation is actually helping people. So, Mikhail, you have anything to say about that?
Yeah. So I think that in terms of like his, the Owen Hart Foundation, I think that it's a brilliant thing, and I think it's fitting, to be honest. And I'll tell you why. Because Owen Hart was known to be a very playful, a very larger than life character. He was playful, he was joyful, he was happy all the time, making jokes. And I think that through this charity, they get to do the same thing. They get to make people smile through charity, like someone who is unfortunate. So I think that is why Owen Hart, and also it's in the name of a good cause. And Owen Hart was a man; he was a family man. So and so in order to like carry on his legacy, even though I think it's Martha trying to carry forward Owen's legacy, but in the way she wants, because she doesn't want WWF to carry on his legacy. She wants to carry on his legacy the way she sees fit, because she knew Owen better than anyone. So yeah, that answers it.
Farama, what about you? What do you think about the Owen Hart Foundation?
I love it. Like I said, Owen Hart should always be known for as a person rather than a wrestler. And I think that the thing Owen Hart is just really tragic. The whole, it's like such a Greek tragedy. It almost is, and there's so many ethical dilemmas with the whole case of Owen Hart. You have to think about him as a family, and also him as a wrestler. But I like Owen Hart Foundation. I think he's doing a good job. I like the fact that the money that she used was set up for a charity event to raise awareness for all these issues. And while I do wish, as a fan, I do wish that Owen was remembered for his matches and for his talent as a wrestler. It goes back to my previous point that I understand as to why Martha Hart would not want Owen the wrestler to be promoted, because when you stories when you hear stories about Owen Hart, the first thing people talk about is Owen the human being. They
Yeah.
don't talk about Owen the wrestler. You know what I'm saying? Like when you look at guys like Shawn Michaels, they talk about Shawn the wrestler, Rick the wrestler, Undertaker the wrestler, Bret Hart the wrestler, The Rock the wrestler. But Owen was one of those guys who was just known. He was better known as a good human being and a caring human being and a great father and a great husband, rather than being a great wrestler. So that's one thing to consider as well.
That's a good point. Mustafa, you want to add anything to that?
No, really. I mean, they've said everything. I think probably like after what happened and seeing that Owen Hart didn't want to continue with the WWE anymore, but unfortunately his life ended in the WWE. The best way you could have continued his legacy was through this foundation. This was the best way she could do, and I feel like this foundation represents Owen Hart in the best way possible. As Rohan said, Owen Hart, the human being, it represents Owen Hart, the person, in the best way possible. He was caring, he was giving, he was always making people laugh, as people said. Even when he was, falling out, he wanted people to get out of the way. Like he was even saying, "Move out." Like that's the kind of person he was. That when he knew that his life was coming to an end, he wanted people to move out of the way so he couldn't hurt anyone. So, like, just to show like how amazing of a person he was, how caring and giving of a person he was, I feel like this foundation is the best way to represent him after his death, after his passing away.
That's a good point, actually.
One question to ask you all.
Yeah,
What do you think would have happened if Owen Hart survived the fall?
I think the WWE would be dead.
Yeah.
financially.
Yeah.
Honestly,
So
I
Yeah.
think they would have
You know what?
screwed everything that WWE is worth if he was
I
alive.
was just thinking, like,
Even
I'm not
and here's the thing,
mocking
right?
him, but what if he survived? You know, like, this
Yeah.
is-
Like, as
Even if
if he
even
survived
if
the
it
fall, then
survived
he
the
would
fall.
definitely be taking WWE to court. Martha would take
Yeah.
WWE to court. They would, and
Exactly.
also the publicity. Like, I think the WWE would be screwed. Like, they would
Exactly.
Oh,
not,
sure. Yeah.
they would, they would lose to WCW in the Monday night ratings because then even the fans would turn on them.
Yeah,
And the
because
thing is, like,
yeah,
and the thing is, like, whether someone dies or not, right? If an accident like that happens, you don't continue working on that same ring, you know? If that accident happened anywhere else, police is called. They put the police line "Do Not Cross" kind of tape around the area, and they rule that scene out as a scene for investigation. That's the first thing that should have happened, whether or not he survived the fall. I mean, yeah, paramedics came, tried to revive him. As soon as they took him in the ambulance, you end the show right there, and you call police. That's the right thing to do. That's a morally right thing to do. So if he would have survived the fall, he would have
Agreed.
definitely taken that into consideration and sued the WWE. Is what I feel like.
that's a good question you asked, Farhan. Actually, personally, I would believe that WWE would be gone. Like how
Yeah,
Mikhail said, financially they would have been drained because
exactly.
you can't do
I
that,
think
man.
nothing would have happened.
You can't do that.
And I
I
think
think
that
nothing would have
Owen
happened.
would have definitely jumped ship to WCW,
No,
guaranteed.
not
No,
just
nothing.
Owen. I think
I think
many
nothing
people
would
would
have
have done.
happened.
Hmm?
I really think nothing would have happened. Hear
No, no,
me out.
no.
I'll tell you what. Hear me out. Hear me out. Just hear me out. Okay. I'll tell you what. Say by some miracle he survives the 100-foot fall. Okay. Okay. So he he cannot walk again. He's alive, but he cannot walk again. Okay. So he's retired on the spot. Number two, he's under contract. He's under contract by the WWE. So what the WWE would do is that they would pay for his medical treatment to avoid punitive damages. That's what would have happened. I don't think
I don't.
anything would have happened.
I don't think so.
You think?
Because you see, I'll be very honest with you. But when this happened, Bret Hart would have been there with Owen Hart. Mikhail,
Yeah.
you want to make a point? Please go ahead.
I get point.
I can guarantee you one thing. If Montreal was not enough to like make WWE lose Canada, if Owen was alive and this whole publicity came out, that would be WWE's
That would be it.
Canadian fan base out the window because
Exactly.
two of the
Exactly.
best wrestlers from Canada being screwed over by the WWF. That's it.
Exactly.
WCW, in terms of territory, WCW would reign supreme in Canada. And even in America, I think that, again, the publicity would just have a very negative impact.
Negative impact. Yeah.
That was a very different time. 99 was a very different time compared to now. Like obviously, if it had happened now, people would have stopped watching WWE and they would have
There
just
would be
like
it would be trending on Twitter, hashtag cancel WWE, all that
Yep.
good stuff.
and
They've
that
been
works.
canceled for
That
sure.
really affects a business, on Twitter when it's a public company, as WWE is. When there's negativity on social media against you, they would have removed Vince McMahon from the head position. They would have put someone else in, to just
No, they
show.
would because at that time Vince was that would not have happened because the company wasn't public at that time.
Correct.
So there's no way because at that time Vince had absolute power, and there's no like he answers to no one at that time. And then in 2001, when the company went public, then only Vince had people to answer to. You know what I'm saying? He has a board who can take him off power. But back then, impossible. No one can stop Vince from being CEO because it's not a public company; it's a private company.
He did face a lot of problems in 2007, but that's a different topic altogether.
So,
That's
so,
Oh,
so
Yeah, because
oh, yeah, yeah.
that I would say the
That's
topic,
a
but
different topic altogether.
I mean, as
uh,
Farhan said, the WWE was public in 2007, so of course.
Yeah,
yeah,
so that of course
the
that
pressure.
explains the PG shift. I think the board of directors are the ones who are pushing for the PG shift. You know what I'm saying? The
No, but
shareholders.
they must have pushed creatively to do that. But at the end of the day, I want to ask you this last question regarding the safety of these wrestlers. They do some crazy stuff. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
they're forced to do this crazy stuff like Jeff Hardy. He's 40 plus and he's still
And
doing
yeah, we
swanton
still saw
of
him.
ladders,
Exactly.
man.
We still saw him.
What? It's crazy. And I was just
I,
seeing the. I'm going to slight topic or slight off topic. I want to talk about like I was seeing the Jeff Hardy Matt Hardy documentary on WWE Network, and once you get addicted to wrestling as a wrestler, it's very difficult to pull that out. Because there was like even for Owen Hart or Bret Hart, Even for Chris Benoit, I'm going to say his name because wrestling is such an important aspect for these guys to do it. Do you think in this time, in 2019, wrestlers who used to take risk in the 90s would have taken the risk as much as now as they were taking the risk then?
No way.
No way, right?
Impossible. And for good reason.
I want actually everyone's opinion on this. Farhan, you can go ahead and Mikhail and Mustafa.
So I think that I'm happy, I'm happy that the wrestlers are not as dangerous today as they were in the 90s.
Yeah.
Because see, ultimately the safety of wrestling. See, why is Bret Hart the best there is, the best there was, and the best there ever will be? Because he never hurt anybody. That's the thing about wrestling. Like guys like Goldberg, okay, they're great athletes, or Nia Jax. We all are God. Can you imagine a match with Nia Jax and Goldberg?
They will kill each other.
They'd kill each other. So yeah, I'm glad that even if that means the quality of the product goes down as an adult, as someone who will eventually have a family, as someone who has priorities beyond, there should be a life beyond work as well. You have to live a life beyond work. And yes, Kunal is a good point about, the business, some wrestlers make the business their lives. I can see where you're coming from. But, the safety is the most important thing. And I'm glad that wrestlers today are taking proper precautions. When there's a stunt that's given, there's a proper precaution that's done for it. So, no way wrestlers today will do the same stunts as they did during the 90s. And you know what? Rightfully so.
Farhan, Mikhail, sorry, you can go ahead.
I think that I agree with Farhan completely. I mean, okay, for us fans, these stunts, they are fun to watch. But when you actually, like when you actually go behind the scene and you understand that these are real life human beings, they're, yes, wrestlers to us. When we were kids, they were superheroes, but we've grown up. Like, we're all in
Yeah.
our 20s. And when we see like a man like Jeff Hardy or a man like Mick Foley falling from a cell, or someone like Chris Benoit getting hit on the head several times with a chair, you stop and think that these are real life human beings who are putting their bodies and their health on the line for our entertainment. And you see it. Like, how many wrestlers do you guys know earlier that hasn't died so early in their life? Macho Man Randy Savage, The Warrior, Eddie Guerrero, Chris Benoit. That's already 4 I can name on the top of my head. These people have died early for a reason, because there weren't that many.
But one
Huh?
thing I would say, these are the known people. Imagine the unknown
Davey
people.
Boy Smith,
Yeah. Brian Pillman.
Brian
Brian
Pillman.
Pillman is a big name.
So, like, I'm not saying, by the way, disclaimer, not
Razor
saying this,
Ramon died.
I'm not saying that these deaths are on WWE, but what I am saying is that there was that kind of, cognizant of what could happen to these wrestlers wasn't there at the time. So I think that where WWE's done right is they have become a lot more precaution. Like, for example, their crackdown on steroids, banning chair shots, even they're reluctant to let blood loss be shown in a match, because again, that even can lead to problems. So I like what WWE is doing nowadays. PG, debatable, maybe not. But the fact is, as long as the wrestlers are safe and they're in a safe working environment, that should be our priority. Like, even us as fans, that if we really love these wrestlers, if they really are heroes, we should be looking out for what's best for them as well.
Yeah.
That's true. Mustafa, you can go ahead with your point.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with both of them. I think they've said everything. I'm glad to see that WWE has taken wrestler safety into consideration finally, and the way they're treated now is much different from how they were. The things they were doing back in the days. Unfortunately, it took the deaths of Chris Benoit and Owen Hart and Eddie Guerrero to finally open their eyes to this issue, but at least they did. Better late than never. At least I still think Jeff Hardy is just. And now when I watch Jeff Hardy, Sami Zayn, and AJ Styles in the recent pay-per-view, seeing him do those things at the age of 40, I feel like it's just the adrenaline in him. Like, he's not doing this to entertain us. He just feels like entertained when he puts himself into life-threatening situations like that. So I feel like we still see those things, but I feel like it's only because they just want to do it themselves instead of they want to do it to entertain us.
Yeah, that's such a good point. Actually, when I saw, when I see WWE taking a lot of precautions now, they're not even chair shots to the face, only to the back. They changed.
Yeah.
That's a good thing.
Yeah,
You changed it. But if you see Eddie Guerrero, like who passed away from a heart attack in 2004, rest in peace, he took a
Rest
chair
in
shot
peace.
from ACL and he bled so much.
Yeah, the Judgment Day 2004, right?
I'm like, what am I seeing?
exactly.
I thought there was a water fountain that came out of his head, with blood. I couldn't believe it. You
That was
know,
botched, by the way.
I don't, yeah, botch or
Several
whatever, man.
of
Which planned or not planned, it's so dangerous. Like, you have seen what happens. Chris Benoit, another episode we want to talk about. That I think that was the game changer. I think not Owen Hart's death. It should have been
Yeah, it
for
should have
me,
been.
but Chris Benoit's death was the game changer because when Farhan just said that the company was public in 2007, that's what really made it more important for WWE to really take a hold of the policies that they were doing. Yeah, Mikhail, you were saying something.
Yeah, Kunal, what I was going to say was that I think that why Owen Hart's death was not like the wake up call that the WWE got was
Hmm.
because what happened with Chris Benoit was directly like, doctors and everyone who's been behind the scenes on what happened with Benoit, they've come to the conclusion that there was something to do with WWE safety precautions. Like, we Chris Benoit's concussions and everything, it had a role to play in what he did. Whereas with Owen Hart, it was just like a freak accident. So it had nothing to do with Owen being hit with a chair or steroids or anything. It was just a freak accident. So
No,
that's why I feel that.
I'm talking about the impact of the incidents. I know they're very different as to what happened. Like, I know you're saying that's a WWE, like it's a freak accident that happened with Owen Hart. Um, but when a guy has passed away and you're continuing the show, that is so much of disrespect to everyone who's wrestling on that ring
Yeah,
presently and who have wrestled in the past. Because it just shows that he didn't give a shit about them.
exactly. Yeah,
Like if suppose if there was no Monday Night War, for example, I didn't believe this would happen, the stunt, because he wanted to do what Sting was doing in WCW from coming from the top. Like WCW Sting was, as Mikhail said, he was a character who used to come from the top. If that didn't happen, I don't think Owen Hart had to do this nonsense, at that particular day.
I think
and it
that,
wasn't.
I mean, yeah, I mean, that's a fair point, Kunal, but I think that, again, I don't think Vince McMahon or anyone was going in with the mindset of how can we, mess around with these people. I think that it was just business because McMahon, he's the chairman, he's the CEO. He was thinking, and he had a really tough competitor. He had a very threatening competitor,
Yeah.
and he did those things. I don't think his mindset was more, how can I one up WCW?
But that's wrong,
But
right?
it's debatable. Look, like as any business, you want to be better than your competitors because you want to give your customers, fans in this case, a reason to tune in.
But the
So I
guy's
don't
died.
think.
The guy's dead.
Yes, and I don't. That's what I'm trying to say. That, but I think that where you're wrong is
Hmm.
that I don't think Vince didn't give a shit. I think that he just didn't realize like that someone was going to fall because they, again, like I mentioned earlier in the podcast, that they had practiced this stunt a lot of times and it came out fine. So no one was going to expect that Owen was going to fall. So of course he's dead, and my condolences to the Hart family, and even it's a really tragic loss what happened that day. But I don't think Vince is malicious. That was my point.
Okay. Mustafa, you want to add something to that?
Yeah, I was about to say, like, any other boss would have cared, like I mentioned the Hillsborough thing, people died in the stands, yet the football match was stopped. In this
Yeah.
case, your own person died in the ring, and he continued with it. So whatever Vince was thinking, this gave people the idea that Vince literally only cared, like only looks at his wrestlers as money and nothing else. He couldn't, like, people were saying, okay, he didn't know what to do. The wrestlers didn't know what to do, so they decided to continue the show. To me, this doesn't make sense. I can't process this. If something like that happens, you end it right there, right then, even if you can't process what happened. Yeah, I mean, I'm saying, like, yeah, because what I think, and this might come as really like just being like really attacking towards Vince, but what I think was that he only thought that, okay, this is a pay-per-view, they pay for this, we can't afford to shut this down, so we gotta continue with it so we can get the money of the pay-per-view. That's what I think Vince was thinking at that point of time. Yes, the other day they made Royce Owen to pay tribute to him, which I think was a really, which I think they like should have done, but to me, like, I think like at that point Vince really didn't care, or at least he didn't look at it as seriously as he should have.
Farhan, do you want to make any point on that?
Yeah, the thing is that like I said, I think Mikala said that this, during that time, the problem is that you learn from tragedies. That's the problem. So I think that the reason that we have a lot of safety these days in WWE is because of guys like Owen, Eddie, and I mean it's sad to say, but they're almost like casualties of WWE's wellness policies. You know
Yeah,
what I'm trying to say? It's a sad thing to say that you had to have these casualties for a wellness policy to be formed. But the way I see it is that we should look at Owen Hart's death as a lesson, and I hope Vince McMahon, like, what I mean, sometimes I go like, why are these wrestlers jumping from the cell cage? Why aren't they smashing themselves with steel chairs? But I sort of stop and I think to myself about guys like Owen, Chris, and guys like Eddie, and I go, you know what? Thank God that they aren't doing that anymore. I don't want to see another wrestler dying because of this sort of this need for entertainment. But all I can say is I'm glad that time has passed. Vince no longer has to resort to such extreme measures, and all we can do is just honor Owen Hart in the best way we can, and try and live our lives the way he conducted himself. That's the
that's that's true. Last point I would like to say. I mean, this is my point. I'm going to end the stream. Um, obviously, WCW and WWE were going head to head at that time, and since then there has been no competition. But now AEW is going against WWE, and NXT and AEW are going together. I don't think there will be that much of a problem now because I think they give a damn about the wrestlers more
Yeah.
than competition.
Yeah.
I think both the companies are doing great. I think NXT is producing some fantastic stuff. AEW is obviously amazing. I think it's a very good option for us as a wrestling fan to see. Sometimes you get sick and tired of the WWE. Like I don't want to see that. I want to see AEW. Like I want to see Chris Jericho. Like he is the guy for me at that time. Whenever he does something in WWE or AEW, you want to see that. And when you see it, but that match of there was one match that really disgusted me was John Moxley versus Kenny Omega. That cannot happen in this day and age, man. That cannot happen. It can't happen in WWE. I can guarantee you for the fact that it can't happen in WWE. And it happened in AEW. I understand the wrestling match, but now after that they didn't do a match like that. And I'm very glad because yeah, it's entertaining to see people going through classes and barbed wires, but at the end of the day, these are people. They have a life.
Yeah.
And like yeah, obviously when you see Chris Benoit coming on the top rope and jumping, giving a flying headbutt, he's gonna get injured someday, and that's what happened in the end. Like something happened to his brain. So even Owen Hart, this tragedy has happened, and we are obviously sad about it. But after that, the only thing you can do is learn. That's all you can do. And it was a great tragedy in terms of like we lost a wrestling star who was known for his family, and that just shows sometimes that we need to understand that family is more important than your career.
I wish
So,
my boss knew that.
huh?
I wish my boss knew that.
Yeah, but we don't do the stuff that they do, that they jump off the top rope and stuff. We don't do
Yeah,
that.
I'm just making a joke. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. We can't even go off a bed. We can't even jump from there also.
Uh,
Yeah. So thank you guys for coming to the Kunal call. It was a great pleasure. Take care.
yeah.
God bless. Yeah. The click. I
Too
would actually
sweet.
prefer the Bullet Club than the click, honestly. But take
Too
care, guys.
sweet.
God bless and see you.